It started with a little girl walking into a CEO's office, and ended with a man tearing down his own empire to build something better. This isn't just a story about business, it's about redemption, family, and the moment everything changes. Stick around, because this one will stay with you. Don't forget to subscribe if you love true, emotional stories that inspire. The late afternoon light filtered through the towering glass windows of Cole Enterprises, casting long reflections across the marble floors. Outside, rain drizzled steadily, muffling the noise of the city. On the executive floor, tension buzzed in every cubicle, analysts and assistants buried in deadlines, avoiding eye contact with the glass doors that led to the corner office of Nathan Cole, the elusive, brilliant CEO. Inside that office, Nathan stood by the window, his posture rigid, his gaze distant as he looked over the wet skyline. The hum of quiet work outside was broken by a sound that didn't belong, the hesitant, soft steps of small shoes. He turned. Standing in the massive doorway, dwarfed by steel and glass, was a little girl in a yellow raincoat, droplets still clinging to her curls. 7 years old, maybe 8. Alone. Fragile, yet unafraid. Before his assistant could react, Nathan raised a hand to stop anyone from intervening. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. The girl stepped forward, her tiny fists clenched, trying hard not to look intimidated. "Please, my mom. She really needs this job. She's amazing. I promise." Silence swallowed the room. Somewhere deep in Nathan's mind, another voice echoed, higher, softer, playful grace. His daughter. Her laughter in that very room, years ago. The sound of Isabel's soft reprimand as she tried to keep their daughter from playing with Nathan's office supplies. Those days were gone, buried with them. But this small voice. "What's your name?" Nathan asked quietly. "Sophie. Sophie Harper." The name stirred nothing, yet everything. A stranger, yet she stood there like someone familiar, like a letter from a life he'd tried to forget. "And who's your mother, Sophie?" "Julia Harper. She applied for that job, the one to help with the big project here. I know she can help you. I know she can make it better." Nathan swallowed, fighting the prick of heat behind his eyes. Boardrooms, mergers, fiscal years, nothing prepared him for this moment. Behind Sophie, employees had gathered, whispering. Security hesitated in the hall. "Let her be," Nathan ordered. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to her eye level. "Does your mom know you're here, Sophie?" Sophie's lower lip trembled, but she stood taller, stubborn. "No. But, she's tired. She works really hard and nobody helps her. I can help her. I want to." Nathan blinked hard, his throat closing. Grace had stood like that once. Same fierce spark. Same defiance against the impossible. The hardened CEO gave way, ever so slightly, to the father he used to be. "Okay," he finally whispered. "Let's see what we can do." For the first time in years, Nathan felt something warm stirring beneath the cold weight of his success, something that looked suspiciously like hope. Outside, the rain kept falling. But inside that towering building of glass and ambition, something small and miraculous had begun to grow. The woman behind the plea. The next morning, a crisp, cloudless day replaced the rain. But inside Nathan Cole's mind, the storm was only just beginning. At exactly 9 a.m., Julia Harper entered the building, escorted nervously by a junior assistant. She wore a professional but slightly outdated suit, clearly cared for but fraying at the cuffs. Her hair was pinned up neatly, but tiredness shaded her sharp eyes. She didn't know her daughter had done the impossible yesterday. When she was led to the conference room on the top floor, she expected nothing but another rejection, another interview where she'd smile, overcompensate, and be told she was impressive, but ultimately not the right fit. It had happened a dozen times before. Nathan entered the room last. His presence was magnetic, his tailored suit immaculate, his posture cold, unreadable. "Ms. Harper," he began, folding his arms, "you have an advocate already." The faintest smile flickered across his mouth. "Your daughter is quite persuasive." Julia froze. Color drained from her cheeks. Oh God. Sophie, she didn't. She did. Bravely, I might add. Nathan gestured for her to sit. Tell me something, are you always that memorable, or does Sophie just bring that out in you? Julia managed to smile despite her nerves. Honestly? Probably the second one. What began as a formal interview quickly unraveled into something much more human. Julia's resume was solid, strong project management skills, years of handling logistics for mid-sized firms, glowing references, but what struck Nathan most wasn't on paper. It was the way she spoke about team dynamics, about building sustainable success rather than chasing quarterly spikes. It was how she subtly mentioned sacrificing promotions because her daughter needed stability more than prestige. Every word she said was wrapped in competence and exhaustion. She was smart, but tired of carrying the invisible weight women like her bore. At one point, she reached into her worn leather handbag for a reference letter. Inside, Nathan caught sight of a small crayon drawing on wrinkled paper, Sophie's unmistakable handiwork. The hard lines in his face softened. When the interview ended, Nathan stood and extended his hand. You're hired. Immediate start, Project Management Division. I'll arrange for your onboarding myself. Julia's mouth fell open. Wait. What? Nathan smiled, softly now. Let's just say I trust the source of your recommendation. Outside the glass walls, executives walked by, casting sideways glances through the windows. By the time Julia left that room, the news had spread. Nathan Cole hired someone personally. A single mom. Why? Julia didn't know yet, but she just stepped into the center of something much bigger than herself. And Nathan, he didn't fully understand it either. But the cracks in his carefully built world were widening. And somehow, he wasn't afraid. Awakening old ghosts. Nathan Cole sat alone in his office as the sun began to set, the orange hue washing over the skyline. But inside, the light felt cold, casting sharp shadows along the sleek modern furnishings that surrounded him. The office was silent except for the faint hum of the city far below. On his desk sat a closed drawer. His hand hovered over it for a long time, trembling slightly, before he finally pulled it open. Inside were things he hadn't touched in years. A small velvet box with Grace's first lock of hair, a photograph of Isabel holding their daughter on a windswept beach, and folded neatly, a child's drawing in crayon of their family. Nathan's chest tightened. Until now, he'd kept these relics buried, like artifacts of a different lifetime. He had convinced himself that being numb was strength. That the only thing that mattered now was growth charts, quarterly earnings, and mergers. But Sophie Harper's voice had cracked that armor. And Julia, the way she carried her exhaustion with dignity, it reminded him so much of Isabel. Different circumstances, different burdens, but the same silent strength. Nathan ran his finger over Isabel's face in the photograph, tracing the faint lines of her smile. The ache was raw, like touching a wound that never fully closed. That night, he stayed late at the office, the city blinking around him like a machine too large to stop. His email chimed. It was Julia, a follow-up, thanking him for the opportunity, humbly offering to take on additional responsibilities if needed. Nathan typed a reply, paused, then deleted the message. Instead, he picked up his phone. You don't have to prove anything more, he finally wrote. You've already done enough. We'll talk about the future soon. As the days passed, Nathan found himself stopping by her department more frequently, not with CEO distance, but with genuine curiosity. Julia's ideas weren't flashy, but they were smart, restructured workflows, employee-led innovation proposals, mentorship programs. Her presence at the company began to draw attention. A few junior employees, mostly women, began offering hesitant suggestions in meetings. Something was shifting, slowly but undeniably. But not everyone liked it. Behind closed doors, whispers began circulating among executives. Charles Denton, in particular, watched Nathan's movements with narrowed eyes. Denton had built much of his career on ruthless efficiency, sacrificing people for profits without hesitation. And now here was Nathan, the Golden Boy CEO, suddenly acting sentimental. Denton leaned across a polished conference table at one board meeting, voice dripping with disdain. Family policies don't build shareholder value, Nathan. Sentiment doesn't close deals. You're drifting. Nathan didn't respond. He only looked at Denton the same way one looks at rot spreading beneath paint. Later that night, alone again in his office, Nathan stood by the window. The world outside glistened with neon, but in the reflection of the glass, he saw not the powerful CEO, but a father. A husband. A man who lost everything except the chance to do something right this time. The past was no longer silent. The ghosts were awake. And Nathan knew now, the question wasn't whether he should change. It was whether he had the courage to face what that change would cost. Outside, the city pulsed onward. But for Nathan Cole, something deeper was stirring, not in profits, but in purpose. Family Forward Initiative. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. It had been building for weeks. Nathan Cole had spent countless late nights in his office, tracing the old outlines of his former life, wondering where the fractures had begun. Julia's presence in the company was a spark, but the flame came from something older, regret. And now, standing before his senior leadership team, he was about to do something that would either define him or destroy him. The boardroom was as cold and imposing as ever. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, city skyline stretching like a kingdom behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. Charles Denton sat to Nathan's left, arms crossed, sharp as a razor in his tailored suit. Evelyn Brooks, her lipstick the same sharp red as her fingernails, sat beside him, already poised for the kill. Nathan tapped the folder in front of him. It wasn't a merger plan. It wasn't a quarterly financial forecast. It was something entirely different. I want to introduce a new initiative, he said clearly, voice steady, steady enough to hide the storm underneath. It's called the Family Forward Initiative. A flicker of movement from Denton's jaw. Evelyn's smile barely shifted, but her eyes narrowed. Paid parental leave, Nathan continued. Child care assistance. Remote flexibility for employees raising families. Part-time return plans for new parents. And yes, full coverage for family medical emergencies. The room stayed silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then it detonated. Are you out of your mind? Denton spat first, the illusion of politeness cracking. Nathan, you're talking about sinking shareholder profits into babysitting services. We're not a social club, Evelyn added sweetly. We're an enterprise. We are people, Nathan said evenly. We're human beings before we are balance sheets. And if we lose that, we lose everything. His gaze swept the room. Retention rates have dropped 15% in 2 years. Talent leaves because we don't care about what matters to them. Families matter. He pushed forward a stack of research. Julia's work, her careful research, nights spent poring over studies and workforce trends while still helping Sophie with homework. Studies showed companies with supportive family policies increased retention and productivity. But that wasn't what won him over. It was the drawing in his drawer. Grace's uneven handwriting, "I love you, Daddy." Do you expect shareholders to swallow this? Denton barked. I expect them to see beyond the next quarter, Nathan replied, fire beneath the words now. For a moment, no one spoke. Not because they agreed, but because they saw it in him now, resolve. The man who had once been their invincible profit machine was suddenly dangerous in a different way. He was human. But being human in that room was like showing weakness in a lion's den. Denton leaned back, eyes glittering. We'll see what the shareholders think of your little charity project. It was a threat. Everyone knew it. Nathan gathered his notes. Good, he said. Let's see. As the meeting broke, Evelyn whispered to Denton, let him fall on his sword. We won't have to lift a finger. But Nathan wasn't falling. He was rising. Later that evening, as Nathan stood alone by his office window, his phone buzzed. A simple message from Julia. Thank you. For all of it. Nathan smiled faintly. Not for the board. Not for Denton. Not even for himself. For Grace. For Isabel. For Sophie. For Julia. For the first time, Nathan Cole was fighting for something that mattered more than winning. And the battle had only just begun. Enemies in the shadows. The backlash didn't take long. It started as murmurs, passing glances in corridors, whispered complaints during coffee breaks. But soon, the tension solidified into open hostility. The headline hit the business press 3 days after the board meeting. CEO shows favoritism. Single mother given executive fast track. The article wasn't subtle. It painted Julia Harper as an opportunist, implying that her relationship with Nathan Cole was the reason for her rapid hire. Anonymous sources, likely Denton's inner circle, provided inflammatory quotes about preferential treatment. Some even hinted at something inappropriate between them. Julia was blindsided. She had spent her life fighting twice as hard to get half as far, and now that she'd finally been given a chance, the world turned its suspicion on her instead of on the broken system around them. In the following days, Julia's inbox filled with venom, anonymous emails, insinuations, thinly veiled threats. Even colleagues she thought friendly began to avoid her in the hallways, fearful of being associated with Cole's pet project. The pain didn't stop at the office. At Sophie's school, things turned brutal. The kids didn't understand business politics, but they understood cruelty. Your mom's with that rich guy. Does he buy you toys now? Sophie came home one day with a torn backpack and silent tears streaking her face. Julia sat in the living room that night holding Sophie close, brushing her curls back. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered. "This isn't your fault. Are we going to be okay?" Sophie asked quietly. Julia didn't have an answer. Not yet. Meanwhile, Nathan watched it unfold from the top floor like a man torn in two. Every insult aimed at Julia felt like a blow to Isabel's memory, and every cruel whisper about Sophie reminded him of Grace. The guilt pressed down on him like iron. Late one evening, Nathan called Julia. "I'm going to fix this," he said quietly. "You don't owe me anything," Julia replied. But her voice was thin with exhaustion. "Yes, I do," he said, staring out into the indifferent glow of the city. "More than you know." In the shadows of boardrooms and sleek hallways, enemies gathered, sharper now, smelling weakness. Denton knew how to play dirty. Evelyn knew how to spread rot beneath polished surfaces. The world was preparing to chew them up and spit them out. But in the quiet spaces of their lives, Julia's small apartment filled with drawings, Nathan's office drawer holding forgotten photographs, something else was building too. Resolve. The fight wasn't just for equity anymore. It was personal. And the people responsible for breaking families? They were about to find out what happens when the forgotten fight back. The buried truth. It came from an unlikely place. One night, after another exhausting day dodging reporters and deflecting boardroom politics, Nathan found an envelope on his office chair. There was no name, no return address, just 2 words written in block letters across the front. "You should know." Inside were copies of old internal memos, dated 15 years earlier. Nathan's fingers trembled as he flipped through them. Letterheads from Cole Enterprises, signatures he recognized, Charles Denton chief among them. One memo caught his eye, marked confidential in red ink. "While we cannot explicitly discriminate, we can implement performance metrics that naturally reduce retention rates of female employees with children. Prioritize cost-cutting through natural attrition in family-related cases." Bile rose in Nathan's throat. He turned another page, and that's when he saw it. Isabel's name. Cole, Isabel. Extended unpaid family leave request. Recommend rejection. Not consistent with productivity goals. Outcome, contract terminated with severance. It hit like a blow to the chest. Nathan had always believed Isabel's departure had been voluntary. That she had stepped away for Grace's sake. That it was a difficult, mutual decision. It wasn't. It had been orchestrated. Engineered by Denton, sanitized by HR, and hidden beneath polished quarterly reports and congratulatory shareholder letters. His entire empire, his wealth, his success, built on the broken back of his own family. His hands balled into fists. Later that night, he shared the documents with Julia. They sat at her small kitchen table, the lamplight soft against the brutal truth on the pages. Julia read in silence, her lips pressed into a thin line. "They took everything from you," she whispered. "Not just me," Nathan said hoarsely. "Isabel. Grace. And now they're trying to break you too." Julia looked up at him, something fierce burning behind her tired eyes. "Then we don't let them. We burn this down, not for revenge. For truth." For the first time in months, Nathan didn't feel lost. He felt purpose. But in the corridors of Cole Enterprises, Denton wasn't finished yet. The news hadn't broken. The world still believed Nathan Cole was the golden CEO distracted by some sentimental midlife crisis. What they didn't know was that the truth was about to explode like dynamite under the foundation of everything they'd built. And Nathan was going to be the one to light the fuse. Breaking the silence. The conference hall was packed. Every shareholder who had ever bought a stake in Cole Enterprises seemed to have shown up. Cameras from every major financial network lined the back walls, their red recording lights blinking steadily like eyes ready to capture blood. Nathan Cole stood at the podium, his fingers steady, his breathing slow. He wasn't wearing his usual armor of the immaculate tailored suit today. Today, he wore a simple dark shirt and blazer, no tie. He wasn't here as the CEO of an empire. He was here as a man, a father, a husband, and a witness to the truth. Standing just behind him, on his left, was Julia. She wore her nerves like armor, her hands tight, but her chin high. Sophie was not in the room. She was safe at home with a trusted friend, unaware that the entire future of their lives was unfolding here. Nathan stepped to the microphone. "Years ago," he began, "I built this company alongside men and women who believed that hard work should mean something. That dedication to your craft could build not just wealth, but meaning." He paused, watching the flicker of discomfort among the executives seated closest to the stage. But somewhere along the way, that meaning was lost. And I was complicit. Willfully blind. Too busy chasing numbers to see the wreckage left behind. He held up the envelope. The same envelope that had appeared on his chair. "What I hold in my hands is the truth that was hidden from me, and from all of you." He unfolded the memo and began reading aloud. "While we cannot explicitly discriminate, we can implement performance metrics that naturally reduce retention rates of female employees with children." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a pen. A few executives turned pale. And then he read the next part. "Cole, Isabel. Extended unpaid family leave request. Recommend rejection. Outcome, contract terminated with severance." Nathan's voice cracked, but he didn't stop. "That woman was my wife," he said. "I thought she left on her own. She didn't. Charles Denton made that happen. And I built this empire standing on that lie." A wave of murmuring broke across the room. From the side of the stage, Charles Denton stood up abruptly. "This is a smear campaign. This is manipulation. That document is ancient history." "History doesn't stay buried, Charles," Nathan said, steel returning to his voice. "It shapes the present. And today, we're rewriting it. You'll ruin this company." Denton barked. "You'll destroy shareholder confidence." "If confidence can only be built on oppression," Nathan replied, "then I'll burn it down myself." Julia stepped forward now, standing beside him, her head held high. "I am not here because of favors or sympathy," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I am here because I deserve to be. And I will fight for every woman who was told she didn't." The reporters caught every word. Flashes lit up the room like fireworks. In that moment, the lie that had lived under Cole Enterprises for decades died. And the world outside? It wasn't ready for what was coming next. The collapse of the old guard. The storm broke quickly after the shareholder meeting. What began as murmurs in financial blogs turned into breaking headlines on national news. Denton's memo circulated through every major outlet, dissected by pundits, condemned by advocacy groups. Social media exploded. Families first. Burn the old guard. Former employees of Cole Enterprises began coming forward, some anonymously, some publicly. The stories spilled out like water breaching a cracked dam. Women forced to choose between their jobs and their children. Promotions passed over. Quiet firings. The board of directors, desperate to preserve any fragment of the company's public reputation, scrambled to act. Behind closed doors, Evelyn Brooks paced like a cornered animal. "We can manage this," she told Denton, voice sharp with panic. "We control too much of the vote. We can still spin this." But Denton saw the writing on the wall. An emergency meeting of the board was called. Nathan didn't attend. He didn't need to. By the following morning, Charles Denton was gone. Officially retired. Quiet severance package. No farewell party. The media wasn't satisfied. Investigations began. Civil suits followed. Coal Enterprises plummeted in stock value, but not because of Nathan's initiatives. Because of Denton's legacy. What shocked everyone was Nathan's next move. In a televised statement, Nathan Cole stepped forward alone. Julia had begged him not to face the cameras by himself, but he insisted. "This is mine to carry," he said gently. To the employees of Coal Enterprises he said, looking straight into the camera lens, "I apologize. Not with words alone, but with action. Effective immediately, I will step down as CEO. This company needs new leadership, leadership shaped by the very people who suffered under its old one." Gasps. Headlines churned out in seconds. Nathan Cole, the golden architect of a billion-dollar empire, walking away. Reporters clamored for more. Why step down when he could have stayed, triumphant? Nathan's answer was simple. "I'm not here to fix a system from inside. I'm here to build a new one." By the end of the week, half the country knew Nathan's name, not just as a magnate, but as a whistleblower against his own success story. And for the first time in decades, he felt free. The Reynolds Foundation. The Grand Hall was nothing like the boardrooms Nathan had lived in for most of his adult life. No suits. No silk ties. No polished glass tables or silent power plays. Instead, the opening ceremony of the Cole Harper Foundation was held in an old community center in Brooklyn, freshly repainted by volunteers. Walls decorated with children's drawings. Folding chairs. Laughter echoing from the halls. Nathan stood on the small stage with Julia beside him, and Sophie sitting proudly in the front row, swinging her legs in her favorite red sneakers. The press was there, of course. Not as many as the scandal days, but still enough cameras to send their words across the country. Nathan glanced down at his note cards and then placed them on the podium, and used. "I've spent my life chasing things," he began. "Money. Influence. Legacy. And all of it felt empty because I was chasing it for the wrong reasons. I thought I was honoring my family by building something huge." He paused. Julia glanced at him, steadying him with just her presence. "But what I didn't realize," he continued, "was that you don't honor people by what you build, you honor them by who you build it for." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Julia stepped forward now. "We started this foundation," she said, "because families shouldn't have to choose between survival and dignity, between raising their children and building their careers. We will fund programs that lift families up, not tear them apart. We will help businesses create environments where parenthood isn't a liability, it's a strength." The applause started small, then built, then roared. And there, sitting between speeches and borrowed chairs, was Sophie. Smiling. After the ceremony, as volunteers served lemonade and paper plates of sandwiches, Nathan crouched beside her. "What do you think, kiddo? Pretty good, huh?" Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "It's better than your old office. Smells like cookies here." Nathan laughed for the first time in months, a real laugh. Not polished, not strategic. Just joy. Julia knelt beside them both, slipping her hand gently into Nathan's. No cameras saw it. No one was watching but Sophie. And to her, it was the most important moment of the whole day. Not business. Not scandal. Family. A new family. Autumn arrived quietly, folding itself around the city with crisp mornings and long shadows. For Nathan Cole, It was the first season in years where he didn't wake up with a calendar full of board meetings, investor calls, or rehearsed speeches. Now, his mornings began with something better. Laughter. Nathan stood at the edge of a small park, hands in his pockets, watching as Sophie darted between piles of leaves, her laughter cutting through the quiet like sunlight. Julia sat on a nearby bench, wrapped in a simple sweater, sketching something in a notebook, plans for the next Cole Harper Community Center. They hadn't rushed anything between them. There had been too much healing needed first. But something real had formed, not built on adrenaline or crisis, but on the steady, gentle layering of trust. One afternoon, Nathan asked Julia if she would come somewhere with him. They drove in silence through winding country roads until they reached a small cemetery, tucked beneath willow trees. The leaves were already drifting down, curling like sleeping fingers across the stones. They stopped at a modest headstone. "Grace, so beloved daughter, you are everywhere the light touches." Julia quietly took Sophie's hand while Nathan knelt and traced his fingers over the engraving. "For a long time," Nathan said, "I thought I lost everything when I lost you." His voice didn't break. It didn't need to. "But Sophie, Julia, they've shown me something different." He looked over his shoulder at the two of them. Sophie waved gently at the grave, as if greeting someone she'd only met in stories. Nathan smiled softly. "You brought me back, Sophie," he whispered. "You brought me home." They didn't stay long. There were no grand speeches. Just the sound of wind through branches, the crunch of leaves under small sneakers. Driving back, Sophie spoke first. "Do you think Grace would have liked cookies too?" she asked. Nathan chuckled. "She would have loved them. Especially chocolate chip." Julia squeezed his hand lightly, and Nathan realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't racing forward or drowning in regret. He was present. What began as a business scandal had ended as the beginning of a new family, born from broken pieces turned into strength. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. And that was enough. In the end, Nathan didn't just change his company, he rebuilt his life. Not for legacy. Not for wealth. But for love. For family. For the people we build with, not just for. Sometimes the greatest success is having the courage to start again. If this story moved you, subscribe right now for more stories like this, real, emotional, and unforgettable. Join the community. Turn on notifications. Let's build something meaningful, together.